It began disguised as a mission to arrest a suspect who had assaulted a police officer 13 days earlier, but ended up to be a gruesome murder that the small Kiriti village was not prepared for. Police Corporal Chibungu Sanga shot and murdered Gregory Kingori Kanyi in cold blood, all because of alcohol. The officer was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Tonight, Murder Tapes regrets to sharply contradict with the High Court findings. This dispatch of Murder Tapes is going to be relatively short because it is straightforward and the facts are simple. We cannot even begin to imagine why it took the court 8 years to litigate this matter. But isn't that how our justice system works? I am Brian Obuya. This is not just another murder story on television. This is Murder Tapes, Sanga and the Mason. And so, it begins. Nestled in the heart of Kenya, Nyeri is a town known for its vibrant community and industrious spirit. It became a county following the new border demarcations in line with the 2010 constitution. Kiriti village is found in Mukuruaine constituency of this county. Now, in 2015, a tragic incident shook this village to its core. A mason lost his life under mysterious circumstances, leading to a protracted legal battle that would span years. In this story, we have interviewed Gladys Gathoni, who is the widow of Gregory Kingori, killed by a police officer in 2015. We also sat down with Esther Njuguna, who was the family psychologist dispatched by the International Justice Mission to counsel the family during that traumatic period. We have also interviewed Mr. Edward Mbanya, a renowned advocate of the High Court who served as the family lawyer in the case against the police officer.
In my career, I think quite a...
Mr. Mbanya currently works as a senior campaigner for civil liberties at Amnesty International. During the litigation of this case, he worked as an advocate at the International Justice Mission. We haven't managed to interview Kingori's other family members due to an ongoing misunderstanding between them. Their sister, whom we will feature in archived footage, declined our requests to talk to the family. A few months ago, I visited my friend, engineer Sami Onyango, at his shop in Nairobi. He runs the only gun shop I know in Kenya. He has handled and trained the usage of firearms for some time now. Actually, he's the Secretary General of the Gun Owners Association, at least at the time. He had this to say about pulling the trigger.
You must know your target. Be sure of it. What is in front of it and what is beyond it.
It is the 8th day of March 2015, around 1 a.m. And as Gregory and his wife Gladys Gathoni Mwangi and their children slept peacefully, a sudden knock at their window shattered the silence of the night. Voices from outside demanded entry.
Na mimi nikaita bwana yangu, nikamwambia kuna watu wako nje wanaitana. Bwana yangu naye akaniambia hajui ni akina nani wanaitana, hata toka nje. Wakaitana tena, Kingori fungua mlango. alikuwa anamjua kwa jina yake. Sasa yeye na yeye akaamka, nikamwambia amke afungue mlango juu hatujui ni akina nani wanaabisha mlango. Sasa yeye alitoka kufungua mlango, mimi nilikuwa bedroom. Sasa yeye alitoka bedroom kukuja table ndio afungue mlango. Hao wana polisi wakafuja mlango. Kufuja mlango, King'ori akaruka nje. Mimi nikasikia mlio wa risasi. Sikuwa nimetoka kwa bedroom. Nikasikia mlio wa risasi. Nikatoka nikaita King'ori. Kutoka nje sikumpata, lakini niliona wana polisi wanne.
The 4 police officers were Police Constable Ireri, Police Constable Ramadhan Bakari, Corporal Chibungu Sanga, and Police Constable Hunja. It turned out that the officers were here to get King'ori for allegedly assaulting Police Constable Ireri on the 22nd day of February 2015 at a local bar, about 13 days earlier. It was said that things escalated as Ireri demanded alcohol from King'ori.
Walikuwa wamefurugana juu ya pombe. Juu huyo polisi alikuwa anasema ati King'ori amekataa kumbaia pombe. Yeye alikuwa mlevi na sasa King'ori alikuwa mlevi. Wakaanza vita, wakapigana huko kwa bar. Shida ilikujia hapo.
The incident happened in March, but the story was that on February 22nd, Gregory Kanyi had gone to a local pub and was drinking alcohol, and a police officer who was known to be a drunkard accosted him and wanted Gregory Kanyi to buy him a drink, and Gregory Kanyi refused. So when he refused, the police officer who was already drunk became violent and assaulted Kanyi. But King'ori Kanyi was able to fight back and defend himself. In his drunken state, the police officer called for reinforcements and they tried to arrest Kanyi, and he ran away with the help of the locals who were there.
And he was angry about it and actually said that, you know, utaniona. So he was like, he was wanted, but he went about his business because there were neighbors. If he needed me, you'd have just sent somebody to find him. So that's actually the reason why they were in his home that day.
They say the arrest appears to have been an afterthought. In fact, Police Constable driver Ramadhan Bakari testified that he was with the trio on patrol at 12:30 a.m. and in his own words, they decided to go and arrest a suspect. When they got to the home, that is the home of Gregory King'ori Kanyi, the home that shares a boundary with the police station, they didn't know which of the 4 houses belonged to King'ori. They knocked on Patrick Kanyi's door. Patrick is King'ori's younger brother.
And so Patrick showed the police officers where, you know, which house was his brother's house. And he wanted to, you know, like follow them and find out, these people are coming to find my brother in the dead of the night. What do they want? And they asked him to open. There was an altercation there, and King'ori ran from the house, and the officers could not find him.
He actually came out in his boxers because he was walking out of bed, and he had left the wife and an infant child in the house. And Chibungu Sanga fired on Kanyi. Somehow Kanyi did not fall at that point in time, but managed to run away.
Hiyo time yenye nilitoka nje, nao King'ori ni kama alishutiwa, akateremka na huko chini kwa kahawa. Nao polisi wakamfuata. Na mimi nikatoka, nikaita Madhaimiru. Kamwambia Madhe, King'ori amekuja ameitwa na sijui ameenda wapi. Kwake ni hapo chini, tukapanda hapo kwangu. Tukaangalia kwani ni nini hiyo ilikuwa imeshutiwa juu. Hatukufikiria kama wanaweza mshuti.
King'ori disappeared into the darkness. The next morning, his lifeless body was discovered in a nearby coffee plantation with a gunshot wound to the chest and back.
Asubuhi yake Fadhainiro ndiye aliamka akaenda kwa brother yake hapo chini, sasa baba mdogo wetu. Kwenda hivi kwa kahawa, akipita hapo juu kahawa iko tu hapo kwa njia, akaona King'ori amelala kwa kahawa. Kwenda kumwangalia akapata ameshutiwa hapa. Sasa yeye ndiye alianza kupiga duru, akaita hao ma neighbors na sisi tukateremka hapo, tukamuona ni kweli yeye ndiye alikuwa ameshutiwa.
By the time the police came, there was a big crowd that was already hostile. So the OCS led the team that came. He came along with the officers who had come the previous night. And the crowds did not want to see these officers because they knew that they're the ones who shot Kanye. And they did the investigations and they carried the body away. But a scenes of crimes officer had come and documented the scene and they walked away.
By the time the case against Corporal Sanga was beginning, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority had taken over the matter. IPO had to take over the murder case because police were already going the cover-up route. The initial recommendation by the investigating officer, Corporal Richard Odhiambo, was that an inquest file is opened and an inquest be carried out to establish how exactly Gregory King'ori met his death. Murder Tapes digresses a bit. You see, inquests are a regular and more convenient way used by police to cover up straightforward killings. An example will be the murder of 2-year-old baby Githinji, who was shot and killed in routine 50-shilling alcohol bribe in Kahawa West. An inquest has stagnated in court since the 2019 killing. A killing where the police officers who pulled the trigger and killed the young boy are known. The station where they worked for is known. What more could an inquest establish?
It will take about an average 3 to 7 years for an inquest to be concluded. And once that inquest is concluded, it means all the witnesses and all the evidence is presented to the magistrate. And once a magistrate now deliberates on the inquest and finds that actually somebody should be charged for murder, 7 years have gone down the line, 5 years have gone down the line. What have you done? You have exposed the evidence that the prosecution is going to use, and you have exposed the witnesses who are going to testify. So once the murder charge is now approved by the magistrate, you go to the murder case. The person who is being accused already has an upper hand because he knows all the evidence that's going to be used against him. If it is not lost, he knows how he's going to counter it. Probably by that time, he has had an opportunity to interfere with the witnesses and tamper with the witnesses. So that's why they prefer that mode of using inquest. So it's been an abuse of the inquest system, and it has resulted in a lot of injustice.
Now back to Gregory Kanye. It turned out there was no need for an inquest. Prosecution witness number 7, Sergeant Joel, who was in charge of the armory at Mukurweini police station, testified that he issued Corporal Sanga Chibungu with an AK-47 firearm of serial number 764872 and 30 rounds of ammunition in its magazine. He also issued Police Constable Ireri, the one who had an altercation 2 weeks ago with King'ori, with a rifle of serial number 042994 with a magazine of 20 rounds of ammunition. Joel told the court that the next day, Corporal Sanga returned the firearm with 28 rounds of ammunition and 2 spent cartridges.
Even the police themselves, when they use the firearm, in most cases, you'll find the matter goes to court and then a person is acquitted because the court, the evidence that will be adduced to will say that this is not the firearm that fired that round. I remember very well the 207 case of this police officer who shot people in Kisumu. He ended up being acquitted because the firearm that he was carrying, that he was issued with, is claimed not to have been to the gun that fired those rounds. And equally, of late, we've seen several MPs being left off the hook, saying that this firearm did not fire that round. So the ballistic examination is a key component when it comes to investigating gun violence, because we have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that this is the firearm that shot that round. And if we don't get it right there, then automatically we are heading for an acquittal in court. So we must link this together, the ballistic examination and the criminal investigation aspect of this.
Even in the case against Chibungu Sanga, the firearm that was submitted to the firearms examiner, Alex Ndindi Mwandawiro, was not the same firearm that was given to the police corporal. Court records show that Chibungu Sanga's gun was of serial number 764872. But when Mwandawiro testified, he talked of a firearm of serial number 763872. One digit, a 4 in the gun given to Chibungu Sanga, had been replaced with a 3 in the gun that firearms examiner Ndindi Mwandawiro examined. But either way, something else had to bring down Sanga. And what was that?
We know King Orikanyi was shot by a rifle. We also know who shot King Orikanyi. It was Chibungu Sanga. Why is that? Because of the 5 officers who went to the scene that night, only one was armed, Chibungu Sanga, and only one fired. And he fired, I think, 2 or 3 rounds from that rifle. 2. Chibungu Sanga.
In his own admission and that of his team members, Sanga was the only one who was armed at the time of the alleged attempted arrest. It is not clear where Police Constable Ireri's firearm was at this moment. The case against Sanga was not an easy one. It took 6 months for the police officer to stand trial and pleaded not guilty on the 16th of September 2015. By January 2023, the High Court at Nyeri was ready to deliver judgment in the murder of Gregory King Orikanyi. And after delaying the judgment for a whole year, you heard that right, Justice Martin Muya said everything that was supposed to be said in the judgment. Then the court deviated in a single paragraph to hand the killer police officer a walk to freedom. We are taking a short break. Murder Tapes returns shortly. Charged with murder, Sanga stood trial at the High Court in Nyeri. The prosecution called 14 witnesses to the stand in an attempt to paint a picture of a man who abused his position of power.
Now came something that we had not come across before, where you have 2 parallel files saying different things. So Chibungu Sanga's lawyers wanted the court to rely on the police file that was requesting an inquest. Why? Because there were some things that were said in the police file which were not factual or true. And one of them was that that file allegedly said that in his statement, King Orikanyi's brother said that he witnessed King Orikanyi being ordered to come out of the house, and he came out with a panga, which he categorically denied ever stating. So which means that was a false statement, and they wanted that put in as evidence. So what resulted was a protracted application and argument by the lawyers. And the court now took 2 years to actually deliberate on that issue before we could proceed with the case.
Chibungu Sanga, the Kilifi-born police officer, denied the charges. But the weight of the evidence began to overwhelm him. The prosecution then took on the defense in a case that was to decide Chibungu Sanga's fate. Central to the defense case was the claim that Gregory King'ori was armed with a panga, justifying the police officer's use of lethal force. But the physical evidence told a very different story. Officer Chibungu Sanga described the weapon as having a tire rubber handle. Yet, the exhibit presented was a wooden handle, a stark contradiction that raised serious doubt in the mind of the judge. The court also heard from several witnesses who reported no sighting of any weapon in King'ori's hands. Patrick Wanjau Kanyi, who was prosecution witness number 3, was the brother of the late Gregory. He told the court that his brother came out with his hands raised in the air. Suddenly, Patrick says, he had gunshots and he did not know where his brother escaped to. Patrick told the court that the officers appeared drunk. One of them was saying that he had been cut with a panga by King'ori. The officers went away and later returned with sniffer dogs.
Hata hakuwa na panga, hatukuwa tunaweka panga kwa table room.
This panga, according to the judge, was not found by the crime scenes officer or the OCS who had come with his team. This panga was found away from the crime scene. And it was found after the crime scene had been documented and the crime scene officers had left. And who found this panga magically? Chibungu Sanga.
Further complicating the officer's account was the forensic evidence related to the gunshots. While Sanga claimed he fired a warning shot in the air, forensic ballistic analysis proved otherwise. 2 bullets struck the door of King'ori's house, contradicting his version and indicating shots aimed directly at King'ori and no warning shot, as the 4 officers vehemently insisted.
So if we are to believe Chibungu Sanga, then there should have been only 1 bullet hole in the house. But the investigators found 2 bullet holes, which contradicted Chibungu Sanga.
And then the OCS, at the time Chief Inspector Nahashon Kipsoi, who testified as prosecution witness number 6, told the court that at the house of the deceased, they found a panga which was blood-stained. But Corporal Sanga, not this, had no injuries on him. This is despite Corporal Sanga days later filing evidence of the injuries, including a P3 form. The issue of King'ori having been armed with a panga was dismissed as it was not shown to the scenes of crime officer who took photographs at the scene. The panga was photographed by another investigator from IPOA. Corporal Sanga had said that he had recovered the panga at a cowshed after following the deceased's trail of blood, and that the panga had a black tire handle. Yet, the panga that was produced and had photographs taken had a brown wooden handle. The OCS, on the other hand, says the panga was found at King'ori's house.
What we argued was that this particular argument of the panga was an afterthought, meant to cover up so they could justify the argument of self-defense. And the court agreed with us. They said that this panga is not admissible. And they said that the argument of self-defense is therefore not available to the accused person. So with that, we thought that a judgment would come in favor of the accused person, that there was murder.
And then, IPOA found that on the night of the alleged attempted arrest, The police officers did not book in the occurrence book that they were leaving the station to go and effect an arrest, which is a standard operating procedure for the police. The combination of contradicting testimony, unreliable evidence, and forensic facts painted a troubling picture, one that the court tried but could not ignore.
Because they left the police station, they said they were going to arrest King Orikanyi, but they did not record in the OB they were going to arrest King Orikanyi. And they were going to arrest King Orikanyi for a misdemeanor, an assault that was done 2 weeks before. So there was no urgency. Okay? So the court agrees the police did not do that. They did not book King Orikanyi. They did not say they're going to they're not going to arrest King Orikanyi. So it was not officially done. But he now goes and says he believes that they went to arrest King Orikanyi, not to kill King Orikanyi. So on the basis of that, he finds that there was no motive for them to kill King Orikanyi. And he uses that as a basis to say that there was no mens rea, which is a prerequisite for murder. And because of that, he says that he cannot convict Chibungu Sanga for murder. He'll instead convict him for manslaughter.
Do you have a feeling, or do you at any point feel that a different judge would have found otherwise?
Definitely. A different judge would have found otherwise.
Inconsistencies like this erode the defense credibility. The evidence showed an unjustified use of lethal force, leading to the officer's conviction and ultimate sentencing.
It is noted that the accused is a first offender. He has undergone a traumatic experience in the last 8 years during the pendency of this matter before the court. And the court has also taken into consideration the victim assessment report and the post-traumatic suffering of the victims.
Justice Muya argued that the prosecution had not proven premeditation. The judge argued that the officers left the station to go arrest a suspect and not to kill the suspect. Sending him away for just 7 years broke down the family.
Sasa hiyo time tulikuwa tunangojea afungwe maisha, lakini tukasikia jaji amesema amefungwa miaka 7, ati hakustakiwa kuua, sijui wanaita aje yenye alistakiwa.
Because this person had been charged with murder, they had hoped he would get a bigger sentence than he got. He was convicted to 7 years in prison, and they felt like that was too little. However, we, did continue working with the clients and debrief them, and to just look at the positive side, at least, he was held to account.
Hatukuridhika. Juu tulikuwa tunatarajia afungwe maisha kwa ile kitendo alikuwa amefanya. Juu awe elimisho not only in Mukulweni but the whole country.
Justice Martin Muya ignored that Corporal Chibungu Sanga was armed at the time of the attempted arrest. Muya further ignored that when they left the station, the officers did not book at the occurrence book, making their mission sinister. They went to effect an arrest way past midnight. They forcefully broke into the house. Justice Muya ignored the officers were 4 in number against one unarmed individual. Justice Martin Muya further ignored that there was no warning shot fired in the air as both penetrated the deceased's wooden door.
Let me correct you. The judge did not ignore these things. The judge actually notes, I can see in paragraph 79 and paragraph 82, he actually notes that the officers left the police station without booking on the OB. Okay? And they went to King Orikanyi's house at midnight. he did not see what the urgency was, given that they were going to arrest him because of an assault that had happened 2 weeks before. This is what he says. There was no urgency. Then he even notes and says that King'ori Kanyi was not a known criminal or gangster.
He says there's no evidence.
Yes. He says there's no evidence that supports that King'ori Kanyi was a gangster or an armed criminal. In fact, the wording was, or someone who was, he says the deceased who was a criminal and dangerous person or was armed. That's the wording he uses. So he has not ignored. He actually notes that. But then he goes on to say he doesn't see any reason why that we should conclude that they went to kill him. He said we should conclude they went to arrest him.
Polisi wawili walimfuata na walikuwa na mbwa. Kuteremka hapo chini hao wana polisi majirani ndio walisikia polisi wakisema tumekamalizia. Sasa hao ma neighbors lakini ni family wakasema wamekamalizia, lakini hawakujua ni nini ina happen. Lakini sasa asubuhi ndio walijua King'ori ndio alikuwa ameshutiwa juu, walikuwa wamesikia mlio wa risasi lakini hawakujua ni wapi. Unaona police station iko hapo.
And it was traumatizing and shocking for Gladys to have to pick up now the pieces of, her family, to raise her children by herself. She was also young. There are so many challenges that come with that. She did commit to counseling and came in for several sessions. And so with therapy and with trauma, it's not a button that you switch on and off. The client has to do the work. As much as the counselor or the therapist is there, also the client has to do some work to recover from these effects, because when trauma goes untreated, it could turn to other disorders, PTSD and the rest. And we saw that with some of the family members, like Patrick. He never quite recovered from this traumatic situation. He never committed to counseling, despite our best efforts. He's continued to struggle with this situation. All these times we went to court, they came prepared, to testify. I remember we'd go for a lot of court preparation sessions with the IPOA colleagues. So every time they had to retell their story, of course it takes them, somewhere dark. I remember one time talking to the younger sisters of King'ori saying, every time the case comes up, that whole week I can't sleep. She has nightmares, intrusive thoughts.
Wagemshika wamfunge, unajua afadhali akae miaka 10 kwa jela kuliko kumuua. Juu hiyo ni kitu. Hiyo ni kitu inaniuma. Hiyo ni kitu inaniumanga kwa roho yangu mpaka wale. Ingekuwa ni mimi naulizwa wakati wa hiyo kesi, mtu wa kuua afadhali hata yeye auliwe. Sasa mimi maisha yangu iliharibika kabisa. Hata auliwe ama afungwe miaka yote. Hata hivyo ndivyo tulikuwa tuna expect wakati wa kesi ikiisha. Lakini tulisikia amefungwa miaka 7, tukasikia vibaya. Tulikuwa tunatarajia hivyo. Ndio hata akifungwa hiyo miaka si atatoka. Na King'ori asaa kufa. Hata fufuka. Mimi nitaishi tu kuteseka na watoto.
One of of the most notable things that delayed justice for King'ori was the refusal by Lady Justice Abigail Mushila to conclude the case after finding that Chibungu Sanga had a case to answer. The murder of King'ori affected his family completely. His two children are now suffering double tragedy after the death of their mother, who succumbed to pneumonia early this year. But the greatest injustice was not committed by the killer police officer Chibungu Sanga, but the High Court, which overlooked the tragic end of Gregory King'ori Kanyi. Thanks for watching. Good evening.